Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for the American Warriors Social and Guest Speaker Program. I am Emma Toops, the co-founder and executive chair of American Warriors at the ACA Business Club, and I'm your MC for the guest speaker program of today's event. Here is a quick agenda. I'll do an introduction of American Warriors, introduce our event sponsors, and then introduce each of our speakers in turn and also serve as timekeeper. After the transition stories, I'll present on solving the transition puzzle, followed by some recognitions, event announcements, and wrap up by drawing for audience gifts. There is a post-program social where you can continue to meet people, ask questions of sponsors and speakers, and eat the rest of the food. First, an introduction to American Warriors. American Warriors is a special interest group of the ACA Business Club, which is a private club with the philosophy that business flows out of relationships. People do business with those they know, like, and trust. Thus, members are committed to creating solid connections by learning and practicing the fundamentals of strategic networking and relationship building. American Warriors then are ACA club members who have an affinity with or supports those who have served our country in military or public service. The mission statement for American Warriors is to provide educational and networking opportunities for patriotic citizens who are leaders in business and support the transition into private and public sector business of active duty service members and first responders. American Warriors participate in regular activities each month, which include a facilitated discussion roundtable, which can be attended in person or by Zoom, the Purple Connection for virtual educational networking, which again is on Zoom, and this semi-annual social and guest speaker program and individual support as applicable. We welcome participation of guests who are other club members and people who are in the military and military support communities. Our event sponsors are those who support the event to cover operational expenses and provide marketing and communication, food, drink, and audience gifts. All are active in military or military support community activities. Some are members of the ACA Club, Kansas City AUSA, or the Olathe Chamber, or are a community partner. We truly appreciate their support as they enable us to organize and conduct this event. I'll recognize a named representative of each sponsor during our recognition segment, but we'll introduce them now. 31 Gifts, Toops Consulting LLC, Castle on a Hill Productions, Sharon K. Keller, Keller Williams Realty Partners, BJ Productions, Park Place Payments, I Got Your Six Real Estate Team, Greater Kansas City Chapter of the Association of the United States Army, Lucas and Associates, Western Governors University, and the Mission Hills Chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Now we'll get started with the guest speaker program. Our first speaker is Walter Schley, a U.S. Marine and Vietnam War veteran. His transition story includes coming home after 22 months in Vietnam, a career as a catalog buyer in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves, coming back to active duty, and retiring as a CW-5. Walt, please come up and give us your remarks.
Well, thank you, Emma. I appreciate it. What's an old retiree got to say? You know, that's probably most of the younger people, you know, for their careers. Relationships, I think Emma touched on the number one thing, and education. But yeah, I got back from Vietnam, and I was lucky when I got to Atlanta in 1969. My brother was running a railroad school, and he said, "Hey, Sears is hiring." So I went over to Sears catalog, and based on my record with the military, they hired me. 16 years later, I rose from, you know, working on the docks to being a catalog order buyer. And all of a sudden, Sears catalog was going away. So what do? I'm in my 30s, you know, I just got my degree, and I thought I was really, you know, up there and knew what I was doing. But now I'm out of a job, married, you know, one kid. And luckily, one of the officers, when I joined the Marine Corps Reserve, it was one of the best things I ever did. And he said, "Hey, we need warrant officers back on active duty." would you like to do that? You can probably get your 20 years in. And so, sure enough, and I end up here in Kansas City with the 24th Marines on their inspector instructor staff, and spent 5 years here, did the Gulf War with them, and then went down to New Orleans, and retired out of New Orleans in 1998. But just before I retired, one of the lieutenant colonels I had served with, a good guy, he said, comes in, bouncing in, and he's retired, and said, hey, would you take my job teaching Marine Corps JROTC? And I said, well, what's that? You know, and he told me about it, and he says, you get the same pay as you did on active duty. Well, to me, that was a no-brainer. Plus, I was helping kids, learned a lot from them, too. But, I did that 6 years down there, got called in active duty in 2003, spent 6 months down at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And then when I got back, finished up school down there. My wife works for immigration, and she got transferred up here to Kansas City. So I come up here and taught at Hickman Mills and Ruskin High School. So, yeah. So I thought I'd been in combat until I went to Ruskin High School. But anyway, I was lucky in relationships, either with, my relatives or with my commanding officers or anybody I got in touch with. And after that, in 2011, I just started working with military organizations, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the Vietnam veterans up in Leavenworth, got involved with the Sons of the American Revolution. So the main thing is, to me, education and relationships. That's going to help you no matter what. So I don't see a timer, but I'm going to ask, anybody got any questions or anything? Yeah, I love the people I were with there at Ruskin, and I hope we changed a lot of lives for the best there. So, but I did enjoy my time there. So, okay. Any other questions? Do I get a prize for being under 10 minutes?
Oh my goodness! I didn't think through that.
But if you want to know anything about retirement, I can tell you a lot about that. So. Okay, you want your next speaker?
Right,
well, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Walt. Our next speaker is Sarah Weygand. She is a post 9/11 U.S. Coast Guard veteran. Her transition story includes coming home after 5 years of service, work in recreational aquatics, earning a college degree with honors, and a career in academia supporting our veterans. Sarah, please come up. Let's hear from you.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks for having me. My name is Sarah Weygand, as Emma introduced me, and I am a 5-year veteran of the United States Coast Guard. I'm also married to a Coast Guard veteran who served 8 years, and I am originally from Massachusetts, and if you're wondering how in the world did a girl from Massachusetts get in the middle of Kansas, it's because my husband's from here, so I blame him. I currently work for KU, so Rock Chalk. And if you're not Rock Chalk, well, that's your own problem. Just kidding. I don't drink the Kool-Aid too much because I'm not from here. But I do love working for KU, and my background is in higher education for the last 7 years. I've worked at Park University as the director of their Military and Veteran Student Services, as well as JCCC and their Veteran Center as well. And now I work for KU in Leavenworth, and if you're like, KU in Leavenworth, that doesn't make sense. We actually have an education site there, and we have 6 programs that are master's programs. And so a lot of the students I serve are CGSC students at Fort Leavenworth and the community members in that area. So that's the plug. But I do have expertise in GI Bill, so all the different GI Bill chapters, as well as tuition assistance. My cards are back there. If anyone needs help with that, please let me know. I don't care if you go to KU or not. I'll help you out. When I got out of the service from the Coast Guard, first of all, I was a reservist first, and then I was like, yeah, I like it, but gosh, 2 months of basic training in A school isn't really what I wanted to do, is sit around once a month and twiddle my thumbs, which is what was happening as a reservist. So I went active duty, but my active duty time is very interesting because I wasn't on a boat. I was near the water, but I was on a boat. I actually was a fitness instructor for the recruits at basic training. So that's a lot of fun. You get to yell at people all day. So if you're having a bad day, it was pretty cool. And then I met my husband, who is stationed there as a firefighter. When I left the service, my first instinct was, hey, I'm free. I have all this freedom now. It's going to be great. And those pieces of service that didn't fit my personality, because I'm pretty bubbly and outgoing and things of that nature, I thought I can let those pieces out a little more now. What I didn't account for is that unmoored, pun intended, feeling of not knowing what to do next. The original reason I joined the Coast Guard is because my dad served. I went to college. I failed out of college at 18, was really lost, went to community college, spent a lot of my own money and racked up some credit card debt, and finally was like, you know what, I really need some direction in my life. So what worried me was I proved to myself I could do these things, but now I'm going to be untethered again. And so what am I going to do with my life? So I got out. I decided education was really important and that I was going to use that GI Bill. So when I got out, I went back to school and I was like, not only am I going to get this degree, I'm going to get a 4.0 because I failed out the first time. And so I did that and it was great. And the Coast Guard really helped me build that foundation, mostly my own personal confidence that I didn't have the first time around. Coast Guard kind of helped me understand that I could do things on my own. So my husband and I went back to school. We decided after community college, let's move to Kansas. Cost of living here is much lower than Massachusetts. And I love it here. And so I went to Park University and got my undergrad there. And what I will say is, when I left, again, education kind of filled that spot for me that the military kind of left that hole, which was structure. I needed some kind of structure. I realized that I was really good in a structured environment. Higher education, it provides a sort of structure, right? Your instructors are telling you what you need to do, when you need to do it, when it's due, things of that nature. So I got really good at doing that. I got really good at school, which was my primary job. And so that's what I did. And when I left, I got a job at Park University, and that's kind of how my higher education journey started for my actual jobs. I found out that I really, really loved helping other veterans and helping other service members, from ROTC students to retired officers to young enlisted soldiers or airmen. I'm the only Coast Guard person I've met undergrad, so I'm not unicorn. So I'm also that like token Coast Guard female, so if you need me for anything, like standing on the field at Royals games, I'm your girl. I got to do a lot of cool stuff because of that. But I really loved helping people, and I always wanted to be a teacher. And so I don't teach primarily, but I do instruct. So I've always kind of been in an instructor field, and that's what I do now for service members, is instruct them on how to navigate that higher education system. So that is what I love to do, and I help those that are coming in understand kind of the bureaucracy that surrounds higher education, and also how they can gain confidence in their journey in higher education and the importance of higher ed. That's not to say that you have to have a master's, bachelor's, associates. I have told soldiers that come in that have left the service that no longer, are doing the hands-on jobs that they did, and now they're in like a psychology degree, because I don't know, their friend was in it, and it sounded good. And they're using their GI Bill, but they're failing every class because they absolutely hate it. And so when I say, why are you doing this? You were a mechanic. Do you like working with your hands? And they say yes. I say, you need to go to JOCO or KCK, and you need to find one of those labor hands-on type jobs and use that GI Bill for that. Don't sit here and get your bachelor's in psychology just because it sounded good. So I like helping transitioning service members as well, so that they can, again, gain that confidence in themselves, get an education, whatever it is fits them, and then move on and do great things. How am I doing on time there, Tony? 3 minutes. Ooh, do I get a prize for doing better than? I'm I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Um, so if you need me, I'll be here for a little bit longer. I have cards in the back. You can yell Uncle Sam's Canoe Club, and I'll probably answer. But thank you for having me, and I believe our next speaker is going to be Joseph.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. Up next is Joseph Howell. He is an Army and Iraq War veteran. His transition story includes coming home after a year in Iraq and becoming a highly successful recruiter in Greater Kansas City and other locations. He retired as a first sergeant and then became an operations manager and is now an entrepreneur. So Joseph, please come up and share your story.
Well, thanks, Emma. What a cool event too. This is so cool. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Joseph Howell, and I was in the Army for 22 years before I ended up retiring. 13 of that I was in Army recruiting, and so I didn't realize it at the time. A lot of those skills that were happening to me in the Army were really shaping me for some of the things that I was going to want to do after I got out. But coming out of, and I was in recruiting for 13 years. Most of that time was here in the Kansas City area, but I also had some time in Chicago, St. Joseph, and so then wound up here in Kansas City. And as I was really good at it. I'm not trying. I was really good at it, and it was really exciting. You know, you never knew what was around the corner, and there was there was somebody you're going to get to help, right? And so, I led several recruiting centers to be very successful in their particular niche. I would say that my getting out of the Army was my story, and I think what I hear a lot from veterans, coming out of the military, is climbing that ladder in the Army gives you a lot of purpose. Gives you a lot of meaning. It's very exciting. Okay, so how can I compete and get to that next level, right? I was always on that role, trying to push to the next level. So I was expecting that when I got out of the Army, I'm going to take that drive and I am going to just blow it out of the water, right? I'm going to climb. I'm going to find out some way to, entrench myself in some company, and I'm going to take it by storm. So that was my first expectation. The second expectation is I expected a lot of clarity. I don't know. I think I knew things were not going to be quite as routinized as the Army was. But I expected there to be something, that there was going to be some sort of way that people organized themselves in some sort of meaningful fashion. And then when I was coming out, so the third thing that I expected was that the civilian population would value my skills lowly, and I was going to have kind of be on this trek to prove them wrong, right? All right, so what I bring to the table is really great, and I'm going to help your organization. So I was going to have to really prove myself in order to earn what I thought I was worth, right? To be able to be able to make back what I was making in the Army, and if I ever wanted to go beyond that, I'd really have to struggle and figure out how to do that. I was lucky because in in recruiting, you're having to sell yourself a lot, like, because so you have to be able to communicate your value pretty well. So on the first one, with expecting to climb the ladder, I didn't understand exactly how like kind of business America worked, right? So I was hired immediately into a company where my boss was the president of the company, and so there was nowhere to go, right? So it was just there. You're doing it, right? And so if I wanted to get more, I had to bring more value. And so that was the first thing, and that's a good thing. You know, I felt like I got to learn that. It was good, but so the second thing on clarity, right? So that thing about climbing the ladder, that's now kind of gone, right? It's gone. Now, I'm not saying you can't climb the ladder. You can get in the you can go work in corporate America, but a lot of the jobs that are out there are small business, and I didn't realize how big of a thing that is. And just like my new friend Andrea, right? She owns a small business and is interested in hiring veterans. So if you guys know anybody, she's that. But but there's a lot of people like my friend Andrea who are doing stuff like that I didn't realize. I thought it would be more structured, like a ladder to climb, right? That comes into clarity. Right? So I got into my company, and yeah, my boss was the president of the company, but guess what? Dude didn't run stuff, right? So he was technically my boss, but I found out that actually other people in the organization had a lot of influence on my future. And so that was a struggle, right? That was a struggle for me coming out, because the Army might be hard, but you at least know who your boss is and who you need to impress to make sure that you go somewhere, right? Which I didn't have that once I got out. And I was wrong about the civilian population valuing my skills lowly. What I found out was actually that I valued my skills too lowly, right? I didn't realize how valuable the lessons that I had learned, the opportunity to add value was to people out in the world. That was something that I was, had to overcome. And so that struggle for a lack of meaning, that having to figure out what's clear and kind of dig your way through it, that was and continues to be a big thing in my life, right? So I would say that my purpose in the Army, instead of climbing that next ladder, what ended up being is I had to step back and say, okay, so what does my life mean? What am I trying to do? Who do I want to impact? And so that's a much bigger part of my life now, that I'm thinking about what's my family's legacy going to be? Who are the people in my community and my business that I get to influence and lead and help give them some clarity in their journey on life? And instead of just looking at life as a ladder to climb, I look at it much more now as who can I help, and how can I make life for the chap next to me a little bit better. And so that's it. All right, thanks guys, appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much, Joseph. All right, our next speaker is Heather Eslick. She also is an Army veteran, an Iraq War veteran. Her transition story includes coming home after Iraq, starting a family, and then entering the civilian sector in a career in the electrical industry, and has now become part of an education board. So, Heather, please come up. Let's hear from you.
Thank you, Emma. I'm super excited to be here. When Emma asked me if I wanted to be a speaker, honestly, I was a little hesitant, because I was like, really, me? What could I possibly say that would really be of any value to anyone? Just because I generally hate talking about myself. So It's one of those things where trying to figure out what I'm going to tell you that might be applicable to your life. So I'm just going to tell you my story, and hopefully there's some lessons in the things that I've done that maybe might speak to someone else. Just a little bit about me. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I served for 4 years as a military intelligence officer. I did one 12-month tour in Iraq, also with my husband, who is dual military, or we were dual military together, excuse me. We'd been married for 12 years, and unfortunately he couldn't be here because we have 2 kids and busy schedules. He is doing the football coach thing tonight. So we have those crazy 2 kids that keep us super busy, 2 dogs, and also 2 geckos. I know you wanted to know that fun fact, so there will be a quiz at the end. So I've been out of the Army now for 9 years. Honestly, the career that I find myself in now is nothing that I ever would have pictured for myself. But that's, part of why we're here, so we can kind of talk about how we get to where we are. So as far as my service goes, my parents are here today. Both of them are veterans, and service has been a tradition in my family for generations. If we combined all of the service in my family, just on my parents' side, not even including my husband's side, we would have over a century of years of service in my family. So, thank you. And mine only accounts for 4 of those, so the other 96 plus don't have anything to do with me. So, but it's a wonderful legacy to be a part of. So service has always been something that was supported by my family, and something that was, it was always there. It was something that was always an option for me. Honestly, for the people who are first generation service members, it's something I took for granted, how difficult it might be for someone who's taking that step and doesn't have that kind of support. So I went to ROTC. I was lucky, got a 4-year scholarship, thankfully. That was back in 2009 when I entered active duty after serving the 4 years in school doing ROTC. And I did all the high-speed things. I had to be the best at everything. I wanted to be 300 plus on my PT test. I did Ranger Challenge. I went to airborne school, summer mountain warfare school. Any school that I could get my hands on, I wanted to do, and I was just so motivated to do all the things. For me, I'd gotten pretty good at the individual skills and, being that top performer. But, that's not really what the military is about. It's about community. It's about your fellow person. But, at that time in my life, I was just, I'm going to be the best that I can be. So, when I got actually into the military and commissioned as a second lieutenant, I really kind of lacked the maturity, emotional intelligence, and all of those things that really would make you a good leader. Luckily, over the last 15 years, that military service time included, I've grown a lot. But my time in the service really had a huge part to do with that. Even though it was short, it was 4 years, but I tell you what, I think I learned more in those 4 years than any comparable amount of time in the civilian sector could ever teach you. And a lot of it happened during deployment. My deployment wasn't hard for what you might think would be difficult in a deployment to a country that's in war. Really, mine was a mental difficulty, a mental struggle. I was that high performer, and I just focused on me, trying to be the best, and, I was selfish. I was a selfish leader, and I was not always kind to other people and trying to help them grow. And luckily, I had a leader who sat me down and told me all of those things. And at the time, it was very hard to hear. It didn't feel like a gift, but it really was a gift. It felt like a punishment at the time, but it really helped me kind of grow to that next level so that I could really take on that leadership position and be that person that I wanted to be. And it wasn't overnight by any means, but it was a wake-up call to say, you're going down this path, and it's not a good path, and I think you should change it because there's potential. So I had potential, great. After deployment, my husband and I decided we wanted to start a family, and we were dual military, so I only owed 4 years active duty, so I decided to get out. And really, it was an emotionally impulsive decision, to be quite honest, but my little nugget, my preborn little baby nugget, I was just so scared of being away from her, I just could not fathom deploying and having to leave her behind or sacrificing my relationship with my husband. So instead of seeing what else the military could provide for me and what other opportunities we might be able to overcome as dual military, I said, nope, I'm cutting bait and I'm out. While I was still in the military, I'd started a master's degree in Homeland Security because I was intel and I thought, oh, a master's in Homeland Security, I'm going to get out and I'm going to be able to just have whatever job I want. I'm going to be able to continue on in intel. And I was super wrong, by the way, really wrong. Super wrong. So I, got out of the military. I applied for some internships. I thought, Homeland Security has a emergency management component. I should be able to get a job. I couldn't even get an internship. I couldn't get an unpaid internship, couldn't even get a conversation with someone, not even an interview. That was really frustrating. And then, we wound up getting stationed in Manhattan, Kansas. My husband was out at Fort Riley. And so Manhattan, Kansas being the mecca of employment, of course, I had so many options. So I actually applied to be a security management officer, which is what I did when I was in the military as an S2. I literally did the job, but I couldn't even get a phone call. So USA Jobs is horrible for someone who is not connected to someone within that realm. And if you've ever applied to USA Jobs, you know this to be true. And I had zero connections. So after beating my head against the wall, I decided I'm just going to try to find something that looks interesting because I need to get paid. And I can't sit at home because that's just not the type of person I am. So I just applied to jobs that, okay, this looks good, I'll try it. And I think one of the biggest expectations that were unmet, aside from the fact that I thought my degree would get me a lot further in my experience, I thought that I would walk into a job and the pay would be there and it would be comparable. I way valued my skill set more than other people. So that was a tough pill. But I got a job in the electrical industry, which is basically a business that sells products to electricians. And I knew nothing about anything electrical because I was a history major with an Intel degree and a master's degree at that. But I got into that business and I worked. I worked at the counter, I worked at the warehouse, I drove a forklift, I delivered product in my car, went to job sites, talked to contractors as much as they didn't want to talk to me, and I learned everything that I could, took classes, and in 2 years I was a district manager in that same business. After those 2 years, the company that I was with, great company, but they were going through an acquisition, and there were some struggles there, so I took a different job, doing the same job with another company, in a management role, but then I just decided management was not for me. I really wanted to do sales. So that's actually what I do now. And what's kind of unique about this role is that all of my peers have engineering degrees. They're engineers, they're construction people. They're not people who have history degrees. But I came in with no industry knowledge and worked my way up. And really a lot of that had to do with the skills that I developed in the military, this attitude of I'm going to come in, I'm going to learn it. Somebody says, take this, run with it, go. Yep, okay, got it. I'll figure it out. So that type of attitude that you don't really get in many other areas of life that came out of the military has served me so well. Because anybody could come in and maybe do this job with a degree, but it's that attitude and it was that drive. Some of it innate, but some of it really developed by the military. The only piece that had been missing for me, which I kind of solved sort of recently, was somebody else spoke to it, but it was the lack of a purpose. I sell electrical products, who cares? Great, I get a paycheck. But I just wanted to do more and wanted to give. And so that's when I decided that, with my kids being in school, that was all of the things that have gone on recently with kids in public education. It really drove me to get very involved in my kids' school. So I decided to run for a completely unpaid, voluntary, and very time-consuming school board position in Lee Summit. I actually won, which was fun. Thank you. So I've done everything from running my own campaign to entering into a field that was completely foreign to me. So it's been a wild ride. And I just want to close with saying thank you all so much if you're here and you're a service member. I know I hate hearing it personally because it's very hard for me to hear and it gets super awkward, but thank you for your service. And thank you for being here today and for listening to me. And I'm sorry I took 10 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you so much, Heather. Last but not least for our transition story speakers is Theodore Burtin. He actually is a veteran of the Army and the Air Force, post 9/11 veteran. His transition story includes coming home after 14 years of service, interim jobs in security, sales, and management, and he is now a licensed realtor and military advocate. Theodore, please come up. Let's hear from you.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank God, first before I get started and stuff. Without him, none of this would be available for me. My military career, there's a dark side to it, so I want to get into that and show you where I'm at now. I was in the military, I was in the Army for 11 and a half years. Within that time, there were some tragic things that happened to me. Went through a very bad divorce. The reason I got out of the military, I'm not going to go into all the specifics, is not only child support, because I have 2 kids, they garnish 90% of my pay. So as an E5, everybody knows as a sergeant, all your responsibility is now taken away from you. So that was number one. Number two, there were things that happened where I got reduced down to E4 because I followed an order that I knew was wrong, but I had to do it. So that was, now I'm an E5, now down to an E4, paying 90% of my pay. Then my ex-wife's calling IG all the time, every day. And then found out later that she had a baby by another guy and added that child to my social security number. And my sergeant major came to me and said, "You are done." That is the reason why I got out of the Army. That is the saddest part of my life at that time, because I felt that weight. And I said, why am I going through this? God, why am I going through this? Because I joined the military as like somebody in the church all the time. And I questioned, why is he having me go through this internally? So when I got out of the military, dealing with the stress, dealing with depression, suicidal for like attempted suicide 6 times, someone who dealt with depression and still deals with it, the pain of that. It's something that most civilians don't understand, is what is it that veterans go through all the time, and what do we have to put up with, and we still are going to be professional. And I busted my butt every day to prove everybody wrong in my unit, and still got out of the Army. Well, the bright side of that is I was able to join the Air Force and kind of start my life back over again, aim high. So got out of the Air Force to pursue a job that didn't turn out well. A few months later, I was like, you know what? Let me go back in the Air Force and pass the physical. The night before signing my contract to go back in the Air Force, I tear my Achilles. So another setback. And then one of my buddies just randomly gave me a call and said, hey, I'm about to sell, I'm not going to say his name, I'm about to sell a famous person a house. Do you want to see their house? And I was like, what? So I was like, heck yeah, I want to see his house. So, after seeing that, he said, hey, you should look to get into real estate and all. And here I am as far as being in real estate. I do my part to not only help people to get homes, because that's the easy part, but I do my part to also give back to the military community, because God shaped me, because he had to, for me, tear me down. The military breaks you down. I feel like the Lord had to break me down to build me back up, to have a backbone, to deal with a lot of stuff, and to deal with the pain and a lot of what veterans go through, and I hear it in real estate. I touch a lot of veterans because of what I do. Because of that, I reach out to different organizations, PTSD on the Missouri and Kansas side. I help veterans get their benefits started with the VA. I help them with their depression. I'm someone that they can talk to, because guess what? I've been there. Letting veterans know, regardless of your pride, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be vulnerable to build yourself back up. My story was not good. You know what I mean? I rose up real quick in the Army to E5. I mean, faster before they changed the regulation, then boosted everybody up. But my chain of command really did not support what I was trying to do, especially being a leader. I still have soldiers now who worked at the White House, work at the Pentagon, and they call me to thank me for shaping them because they saw what I had to go through. And I said, you continue to do this because this is the right answer, you know. And that's just a part of me that I feel like I'm still serving with them. And they're still in. I still get phone calls all the time and stuff. But it's been very, very difficult. But again, helping veterans, helping us. A lot of civilians, you don't understand what we've had to go through. And you don't. And when you say thank you for your service, well, what are you thanking us for? You know, I can't speak for every veteran, which I'm not, but what I will say is this. There's a lot of things that a lot of veterans did that you don't know of. And when you have a son and daughter who you can't talk to, and then I come and talk to them, and they're like, he said more to you, or she said more to you than they've ever even talked to me. And I'm like, because I can relate. You're a mother, or you're a father. You see them as your child. You don't see them for what they really are, because they grew up, and you refuse to see that. So having someone that can relate to all soldiers because of what I've had to go through and be vulnerable and still go and do real estate and do my job, I don't do it for the money. For me, I'm trying to build a legacy of what is people going to talk about when I'm gone. And I don't want them to say, oh, I made so much money. It's like he was willing to give back to his community. And helping veterans, that's giving back. So to me, that's the bigger picture. That's what God has put in my heart. That's what Jesus, to me, I'll tell people my mentor is someone who did great work, who helped a lot of people, and he never asked for a dime. And that's Jesus Christ. And I built my business model, and my life is still built on that, because he had to, again, break me down to build me back up and all. So if you know any veterans that are looking to buy a house, yes, I'm going to advertise, let them know that I can help them. But if they're dealing with something, you know, you feel free to reach out to me. You know, there's different resources that they may not know about. There's different benefits that are out there for veterans and stuff like that. So in closing, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for everyone that set this up, and you're not alone. You know, you're not alone. So.
All right, thank you, Theodore. Now that we've heard our guest speakers' stories, I'm going to talk about how military transition is like a jigsaw puzzle. In their stories, there were probably times in their journey where their life was like this picture. It's a mess of pieces, and what is it supposed to look like for what's next? Transition is a process, whether it is from the military or something else in life, school, career, or business. This paradigm of solving the transition puzzle, this is at the center of the work that I do as a strengths profile practitioner and academic and career transition coach. Solving the transition puzzle requires 5 elements. What you need is a forward-facing picture, 2 edges that are focused on your identity and purpose, and then 2 edges that are focused on the environment and the routines for where you show up, perform actions, and get assessed for success. Having clear definitions and a semblance of clarity in these 5 elements provides you focus, and it enables intentional actions and efficiency when you're in transition. So a picture is what you envision. It is a goal. It is an objective or a result or an outcome that you are trying to make real. You are taking steps to achieve it. Putting a frame around it with clearly defined edges gives you known points for reference, and it allows you to focus for how you apply yourself and your resources and where your energy is directed. Not having a clear picture, because that sometimes is the case when you're in transition, is okay, but you need to put a frame around it. The picture starts to come together as you encounter pieces in your transition. Those pieces can be people and what they teach you. It can be their advice, whether it's good or not. Sometimes you have to assess what that is. It also is opportunities. And you either discard or place the relevant pieces towards completing your picture because you have known points of reference and a focus with the vision that you have, or at least your defined edges. So something to note as far as this picture that becomes your reality is that what you envision doesn't necessarily become your reality. We've heard that a little bit as far as the expectations of some of our speakers tonight. What your reality becomes is what the frame supports. So what do I mean by this? Let me explain. The first edge is personal identity. Who are you? Now, this can be a difficult question for a lot of people when they're in transition, because so much of their identity is based on who they presently are, where they are currently. To move on to what's next, you have to focus on a future you, who you become by applying your current skills, abilities, your talents, your values, and whatever your available resources are. What of your current self can be applied in a future career or work that you can and want to do to achieve an outcome or a result that you want to be able to promise on delivery? Because that's what business is. I can and I promise I will, because I have in the past or because I'm trained and can do it. For you, because I'm willing to learn and grow and show up to your expectation and be that person for you. The second edge is purpose. Why? Why do you want what is in your picture? Let's say it's a certain vision for a career. Just because you've done it in the past in work doesn't mean you should in whatever your future opportunity is. You can choose because you live in America, right? You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What work do you really want to do? What drives you? It makes you happy. It makes you proud. It makes you energetic. And it's a pursuit of your happiness. And you're confident in it. Your purpose should be emotional. Because sometimes what we want isn't necessarily rational or practical. Or maybe it's not yet attainable for our current resources. However, people who are driven by emotions keep striving towards that, right? You justify your decisions with logic. Your purpose is your energy battery. You have a strong enough purpose, it will make you keep taking steps to get closer to what you say that you want. Even if the situation, the environment, and what you think you know or have access to in resources, they may literally be crappy. All of us who've been in service, we still get the mission done, despite lack of resources, lack of time, shortages in the team, whatever that is. because it's the purpose that drives us. There's a reason for why we do the work. How you get what you want is by being resourceful and continuing to put forth energy towards that outcome. But solving the transition puzzle isn't just about you. That's only two edges of the picture frame. The third edge is environment. So this literally is a big challenge for folks coming out of the military. The environment of military service is service to the country. It's overseas a lot of the time if we're on a deployment. So that environment change is a big part. Life doesn't happen in your head. The picture and the first two edges, those are kind of all idea. A vision and plan are not what you make your picture real. The vision and plan, they play out. You show up, things happen, people are taking action, and resources are being applied. And it may not play out as you expected. And as we all know, what plan ever does? When you show up with only what you believe for the rules and behavior for how to apply yourself and achieve your goals, you may or may not get what you intended. Values and belief are what guide you in your behavior, your performance, and your measures for success. However, your expectations may or may not line up to those of the environment that you are now showing up in. Are you being assessed to success in your own mind, or to those who are actually the ones you're accountable to? At the end of the day, it's the environment that rules. And how are you showing up in it? Do you know enough? Do you have the right resources? Can you create access to the knowledge and opportunities because of who you know? The fourth edge is routines. This is where life happens. This is where things get real, because they're not merely ideas and plans and concepts and empty space. Showing up to the expectations of the environment requires you to know what is routine. For those who live and work and play and exist with confidence and success for that space. When you're in transition, your level of confidence may not be the same as those who are showing up routinely in that environment. How do you learn what those routines are if you're not already familiar with that space? You meet people who are the natives, the folks who have been there. You learn from them. This is why networking is crucial when you are in transition. If you show up living in your own head for what is routine, you may or may not be adhering to the routines of everyone else. They're not necessarily like you as far as the routine that you think is for everybody else. Will you fit in with how you communicate, how you behave, or how you do the work? Will you engage with others in the most effective way, or be that efficient, high-level performer that you're used to based on where you're coming from? What are the measures of success and performance in your new environment? And do you meet them by those who would assess you? You may think you're being successful, but are you? Sometimes there's a disconnect because life doesn't happen in your head. It happens and is real when you show up, you take action, and you get assessed against the standards of that environment that you are now in and its routines. So transition is a process, regardless of whether or not it's from the military, coming out of school, going into business. Everyone goes through it. And whether it's long, difficult, or somewhere in between, kind of depends. I said before, this paradigm of solving the transition puzzle, this is kind of the center of the work that I do as a strengths profile practitioner and an academic and career transition coach. The more clarity that you have in these 5 elements, the more focused, intentional, and efficient you can be. And all of that kind of translates to probably a more successful transition to get on to what's next in life, school, career, or business. Where in this process might you be if you're in transition, or someone that you know who is in transition or about to be? Where might they be undecided, lack confidence, or lack clarity? Is it in one or more of these areas? Toops Consulting, American Warriors, the Purple Connection, the Military Support Community, we all offer resources that can help address transition challenges and get that person in transition through the process faster and with greater success. Because a lot of us can relate, can understand what those transition challenges are. So connect with us and let us help you. Life doesn't happen in your head. It plays out in the space that you show up in when you act and apply resources. Thank you, each of you, for sharing your experience with us. We want to acknowledge and thank you, the community, as well. You are the community natives who are confident and successful in how you already show up routinely in your space. You are a significant resource, and you may not even know it. You too can help in the transition process. When somebody who is in transition identifies that they want to be like you, that's how you can help them. Here are some ways you can participate. You can become a part of the Purple Connection community. TPC is a virtual and monthly educational networking event that David and I organize, host, and sponsor. And it helps to create awareness, enable access, and encourage action between those in transition and the community who can and wants to support them. It is every third Thursday at 4:30 to 5:30 Central and is on Zoom. You can also become a member of the ACA Business Club and participate in the American Warriors Interest Group. Some of the many benefits of the club are listed on this slide. So this includes access to any of our club facilities wherever they happen to be. Here in Kansas City Metro, we have 5 club facilities. You have access to the events and activities that are organized by our members. You have the opportunity to join more than one interest group. American Warriors is one of over 20. And then there's the opportunity to become part of a business development team or step up into some leadership opportunities if that's something that you're willing and want to do. American Warriors monthly meeting is every 4th Thursday for a discussion roundtable, except for February and August, which we then do this social and guest speaker program. All attendees contribute to the conversation for the discussion roundtable with their perspectives on the topic of discussion. American Warriors are always encouraged to invite their friends, community partners, and also transitioning military as guests to contribute to the discussion and also to benefit from the conversation. Contact me if you have any questions about our work, the various ways to get involved, or anything else that has been said or presented today. Connect with me on LinkedIn or at a future ACA Club event. This venue is the American Legion Post 370, so thank you to Stephanie Stites, who is the general manager of the facility. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.